waves that are coming into the solar system, or actually our solar system is entering into a part of the galaxy that is of a higher vibrational nature. This is affecting the consciousness of a lot of people, and a lot of the lower vibrational, service to self type of people are having a very difficult time with this. And this is behind, I on the television, I don't even watch television anymore. I used to every once in a while turn on the television, and every couple of days there'd be a shooting. Now every morning there's 2 or 3 shootings. Yeah. On the television. So it's sort of like an end times madness kind of effect it's having on the consciousness of certain people.
Well, I totally agree with you on that. I think we've reached some kind of energy where it's just, I don't know what it's just some psychosis or something's happening with energy on the planet, and there's loads of things going on at the moment. I don't know what that is. There's loads of kind of negativity going on. There's loads of things, the shootings and there's bombings and everything else, and it's just like the lunatics are running the asylum at the moment, and it's getting concerning to a certain extent.
Yeah, people are being triggered all over the place, and I put out on my site that the Blue Avians stated to me that things were going to get worse before it got better, and that anchored a lot of people. They said, you know what, we've been through enough, we've had enough of a bad time, I'm ready for it to be over. I do not want it to get worse. And
I agree with you on that. There's a few people that I speak to and have said, look, we've had enough. We've been through it. Enough's enough now. We're just getting impatient. Just press the button, do the reset, or do what needs to be done.
Right.
I would like to define the term Blue Avians for a moment for those who don't already know what he's talking about, because some people have not read any of his stuff.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. So in the 1980s, one of my top insiders actually worked for Ronald Reagan. His code name was Mr. Do because he was like the Tesla of the Black Ops. He invented all kinds of weird technology. And so he was there with Reagan and Reagan's top advisors, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in the 1980s when they were wrestling with a very astonishing thing that happened, which is an object about the size of the planet Neptune came into our solar system. It was cloaked, but it was very evident to them that it was there, and it started to circle the planets. It went to Pluto, circled around Pluto, went to Neptune, circled around Neptune, went to Uranus. And then once it got around there, they went out to intercept it with the craft that they have that we're not supposed to know about, going all the way back to Roswell and even before that. And the beings just said, we're peaceful explorers taking a cruise around the solar system. And the Cabal people said, well, get the heck out of here. You're not wanted here. And they said, okay, fine, we'll go, no problem. Well, then, as Corey has indicated, beginning in the late 1990s, we had a huge proliferation of giant spheres come into our solar system. And I was following this story on a website called cyberspaceorbit.com. There was a guy, Kent Stedman, who was talking about what he called sun cruisers. And right on the NASA feed of SOHO, which is the Solar Observation Satellite, we were seeing these huge planet-sized glowing objects coming and going out of the sun. And I wondered what the heck was going on. Nobody really knew back then. Well, it turns out that these spheres have been coming in all along, but then there was a huge spike of them around 2012, which coincidentally or not coincidentally is the end date of the Mayan calendar. This is something that people can laugh off on the internet and say, oh, these guys are just making up a bunch of stuff. Yet I've heard it from multiple insiders who've demonstrated credibility that this is happening, and it is a very big shock to the space program because what has occurred is that these spheres have beings that have showed up in them that they have never encountered. Now, they've encountered many, many thousands of different types of extraterrestrial life, all of which are more or less hominid or human in appearance to some degree. They have a head, they have arms and legs, they walk on 2 feet. That's very standard. But what they haven't seen is these beings that have showed up in these spheres. It's caused great confusion And interestingly enough, the same faction of the space program that Corey worked in, which is called Solar Warden, actually has broken away from the rest of the space program, and they are the ones that started this initiative to defeat the cabal on Earth, to bring down the financial tyranny that is now threatening Ireland, that's now threatening Greece, and many other countries as well. And their goal is to get us all this technology. They couldn't have done that on their own. They don't have the capability. And what's happened is that these sphere beings, of which the blue avians literally we're saying is a human-bird morph. It's a humanoid bird. These blue avians are one of 5 groups that are helping ensure that we have this smooth transition into this golden age. But they have to do this under the Prime Directive. They have to follow free will, which means they can't just come in and rescue us. That would totally destroy what they're trying to facilitate. We need to be the ones to create the change. They're just going to help us. It's like the mother lion giving her cub a partially killed animal, but the cub has to finish off the kill. It's the same thing they're doing with us here.
Okay, well, what about the negative ETs? They don't seem to be following any Prime Directive.
They don't have a choice but to follow what is called the rules that several different insiders have told me about, meaning that we on Earth ultimately are in a holographic illusion in which it appears that the negative is doing whatever it wants, but it's actually very tightly contained. And they try and try and try to do all kinds of stuff that would create mass depopulation, and those things are not allowed. So we have to really look at what is happening on Earth as a direct reflection of what has been permitted to occur by our collective free will.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to read out some of the information here that was on Corey's website, and maybe both of you can have a just mention or talk about it. It says here, top Cabal insiders from 2009 said the shift is not 2012 but 2017, which is a massive solar event pushing humanity up vibrationally to fourth density. This is where PSI abilities come in, telepathy, clairvoyance, astral travel, etc. So we often hear about the shift or the event going to take place. We've heard this a number of times, and we've had a couple of guests on talking about it. So what is this going to, I mean, without going down the New Age side, we talk about ascension as well. But what's really going to happen? I mean, is this kind of we're going to lose our physical bodies, we're going to die, or what's really going? How can you clarify the ascension, this energy shift for us?
Well, I'll start and then hand it over to Corey. And the reason why I'm starting is because I've been out there with my own website since 1999. I've been putting content online since 1996, talking about this subject. And what most people are unaware of is that there is a massive degree of heavily verified scientific data that gives us an insight into this. So, for example, in 2000, I found a paper called Planetophysical State of the Earth and Life by Dr. Alexei Dmitriev, and it was on a website called the Millennium Group. And this was describing a energetic shift that was going on in our solar system where Dr. Dmitriev was pointing out hard data from Russian astrophysical observations showing that the sun and all the planets, they didn't have all of them. They didn't have Mercury, but they had Mars, Venus, Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, showing really bizarre, discontinuous, meaning very sudden changes. And these changes included all the stuff that we're seeing on Earth. Temperature increases, brightness increases, very noticeable magnetic field increases, huge spikes in the amount of charged particles in their atmospheres. And so I ended up partnering up with Richard C. Hoagland, the guy that's famous for the Face on Mars scholarship. And I believe it was back in 2003 that we started to work on this, where Richard said to me, David, nobody's going to believe this if it's just Russian scientists. We got to move the ball forward and bring it into the arena of NASA. And so I actually spent about half a year, and I think it was at the beginning of 2004, where all I did is collate the NASA data that was showing that this is happening. So we have now irrefutable data points that there are changes going on every planet in the solar system And it's interesting because when you read the official press releases, they don't deny that this is happening. But what they say is, this is a local effect caused by the tilt angle of the planet to the sun. That's usually what they say. Well, that's a conspiracy theory. How could all the planets in our solar system simultaneously be tilting in just the right way to get a little more sunlight so they get a little, it's not just a little either. I mean, we're talking, for example, Jupiter has increased so much in the last just 5 years that the difference between the temperature change in Jupiter's atmosphere is equivalent to the coldest place on Earth suddenly ramping up to the heat of the hottest place on Earth, which is Death Valley. We had a huge storm appear on Saturn a couple years ago that literally engulfed the entire northern hemisphere of Saturn. It was this big band that just went all the way around the planet, a huge change in the colors and the striping of the planet. We've had I could list it off for you. It's an incredible body of data. So again, people are always out there, the paid trolls are saying, oh, there's no proof, there's no evidence. We have an abundance of evidence. The question also is, what did the ancient prophecies say? And that's what's going to get to the meat of your question. I'm trying to get through this as quick as I can. Okay. I've also done the research. Graham Hancock wrote a wonderful book called Fingerprints of the Gods, which I got right after I graduated out of college in 1995. And he talks about two historians who were at the top of their game, had hundreds of cited papers to their names, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschen. They were the darlings of the history community up until they did their grand theory, the grand hypothesis that tied it all together, which they published in a huge book that could be very effective as a weapon if you threw it at someone. It's called Hamlet's Mill. It's ginormous. Excellent. And what they did in that book is to show 35 different ancient cultures around the world, which includes all the big religions, all the stuff we know of, and a lot of stuff that's much more obscure, everything from the middle of the Pacific Ocean to the Arctic wasteland. Wherever there's a culture, you find that they all were given prophecy about us going through some sort of consciousness change, some sort of activation of what it means to be human that fundamentally alters the essence of humanity as a species, so that we essentially seem to be going from a being of flesh and blood to a being that is predominantly of light. And so I also love to cite the Tibetan rainbow body in this, which is Tibetan Buddhism was founded around 800 AD by a guy called Padmasambhava, who apparently could fly and could push his hand through rock and could create all kinds of weird miracles. He could cause patterns to form in rocks. He just waves his hand over it, and these shapes appear in the rocks. And there's still plenty of sacred sites in Tibet you can go to where that happened. Those are called termas. What he ultimately did is to turn into light at the end of his life, and then 25 of his disciples did the same thing. And when he turned into light, the light was rainbow colored. It was like beams of different colors. And so they called it the rainbow body. And there are a series of teachings that are specific enough and useful enough that the Tibetans have now documented 160,000 people who have ascended and turned into this rainbow body. And so then that would lead to the question, well, that's pretty freaking cool. What did they do? Yeah. And the teaching is actually remarkably simple. All you have to do, right? All you have to do is have every thought be a loving thought.
Wow, that's going to be a hard one.
I haven't gotten there yet.
No.
So what is happening is that on a collective level, that's like the Olympics, where you can actually get out of here anytime you want, turn into light body whenever you want, if you can make it to that level of perfection. But what's happening to us as a whole now is that our planet has turned into a pyramid. The original purpose of the Great Pyramid is the same thing. You go up into the king's chamber, there's a coffin in there. That's the granite sarcophagus. Oh, well, people say, oh, that means there was a mummy in the pyramid. No. The granite sarcophagus is an ascension chamber. The pyramid was originally built by the same beings who have now come back in all these spheres, and they made a grand showing back then, giving us this pyramid, which originally had mirror-polished white limestone. That's been proven. The thing looked like a marble sculpture sitting in the desert,